Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Adam Ratliff with Adam's So Fun, and today we're going to continue on the Day at the Zoo. This is the Day at the Zoo quilt. This is a quilt I designed for the stitch along, so we can not only piece it, but then we can take it to the long arm, or you can take it to your domestic machine, and we can do some free motion quilting together. This is made from the Zoology line by Gingerbread. She's one of my favorite fabric designers, and I feel like her prints and these panels just really lend themselves to free motion quilting. And it, like I said, like I always say, if it doesn't look good, at least that little sloth is super cute. So we're going to practice, and you know, this doesn't have to go into a museum. It just has to give you confidence. We all know how to make a 4-patch. That's not going to be hard. So we are going to be doing quarter triangles kind of today. We've already done our flying geese. We did our cutting. So this is video 3, and it's going to be the quarter square triangles and then making the 4 patches. We all know how to make a 4-patch. That's not going to be hard, but the quarter square triangles can trip a few people up. So I'm going to show you the method I like to do. It's the sandwich method, and multiple different names for it. It's just the way that I like to do it. One of the tools I'm going to be using today, this is the Quilter's Magic Wand. There's a bunch of different versions of this, but this is just a piece of acrylic. It's a 1/2 inch. There is an etched line down the center, and when we do a lot of blocks, the pattern's going to say, like, draw a line down the center and then stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. Well, instead of drawing that line down the center and stitching using the 1/4 inch foot to go on each side of that line, this has that center marking, and we're going to mark the lines we're actually stitching on. Let me tell you, I can stitch on a line really good. I love the paper piece. Sometimes that 1/4 inch isn't working for me. You have those days where you just can't hit that 1/4 inch. This takes the guesswork out because I don't have to hit the 1/4 inch. I can just stitch on the line. And I am using blue water erasable marking pen today from Clover. You can use anything to mark the backs of these. I love the sew line, like clicky pencils, to mark quilts when I'm long arm quilting. I don't necessarily like them for this application because I feel like as you're using that lead, or the ceramic lead, it can just not distort the fabric, but the fibers. It kind of gets hung up on the fibers, whereas since this is more like a marker tip, it's going to glide right over everything. So I'm going to bring you in close, and so we can just see the table. I'm going to try to do everything upside down because in the last video I noticed that my head kept getting in the way. So to save us from my head getting in the way, I'm going to try my best. No judging in the comments, please. But let me bring you in close and we'll get this started. It's super easy, and we're just going to sew on the line, cut, sew on the line, cut, done. So we'll see you back in a second. All right, so today we are working with our 3 1/4 inch square, or 3 3/4 inch squares. And these are going to end up becoming, one set will become 2 quarter square triangle blocks. So first thing I need to do is I need to make that line on the back of my block so that when I stitch it, I have that line to stitch on. So I'm going to get my Quilter's Magic Wand, and I think you can probably see the kind of line in the center. I line that up corner to corner, take my water soluble pen, and I'm going to put a line on each side of this. A little contorting on one side to get to the left. And I like to do this without moving this ruler. So I'm going to push it down and do a line, and then do the line on the other side. And now we have our lines that we're going to sew on. And it was that easy. We're done with that. Now I've already matched up all my fabrics with which one's going where. So I'm just going to line these up, and we can take it to the machine. Now this is a water soluble pen, but I still like to draw on the back of the colored pieces. So I use my colored pieces. Now we're going to the machine. I'm going to be using a walking foot today. I'm still using my Bernina. This Bernina has the dual feed, so it has somewhat of a built-in walking foot, but that walking foot doesn't take effect until the fabric goes through the foot and it can grab it in the back and pull it through. Whereas this walking foot and a traditional walking foot have these kind of feed dogs in the front, so it's going to pull everything through together. So this is all bias, and I want to make sure that these don't get distorted, so I'm using my regular walking foot. So I'll throw that on my machine if I can, And now I can come over, remove that, and take my piece, and I'm just going to sew right on that line. I have to take off my shoe because I can't sew with shoes on for some reason. So I'm going to line that line up, and I'm sewing right on the line. Nothing fancy. I can grab my next piece, and when I do this, I do them all at the same time, so I'm going to stagger them back and forth. So this first piece, I sewed the right side. The next piece, I'm going to sew the left side. So I only have to take a few stitches before I can squish the next piece in there. And then when I get to the end, I can come snip this one off, turn it around, and sew the other side. And I would continue all of my pieces just like that. So at the end, we're going to get, oh, I guess I need one of these. All right, so we've sewn both sides, and we're going to get a piece that looks like this. It's just our square. Our two lines are sewn. And now we need to cut this into two. So I'm just going to cut the diagonal line that we should have drew. Instead, we drew the other one. So just corner to corner. And I'm using my Quilter Select ruler so it doesn't slide. And corner to corner, because we need our two triangles. So this is when I would steam it, and then steam it to set the seam, open it. I do that finger press, so I don't use my ruler to, distort this edge any, and then I actually just press this down. So I would have two of the same units. So we have those done already. And so this is one of my other blocks. Now I have my two identical pieces. These, and I press everything to the color. I'm pressing to the color side. So now we're going to restack these right sides together with the colors opposite each other. And because we pressed those seams to the color, we're going to get a nice lip between the two that we can line up. So I'm going to mess this around a little bit. And we're making these oversized. So if they're off a little bit, we're going to trim it down later. So we're going to be okay. We still want to be as good as we can, but if it does get off a little bit, it's okay. So now I have that. I'm going to use my Quilter's Magic Wand again, because we need two more lines to stitch on this one. And we're doing the same exact thing, except this time there's a seam we're stitching over. So I can bring it over to my machine, stitch it again. And from the magic of film, I have one right in front of me. And now we have this. So this is just like that first block, except now we have more pieces. And I'm going to, again, cut these in half, corner to corner. Because remember, this is going to give us two identical blocks. And now I would take this over, steam it, open and finger press. And there's our super fast, easy quarter square triangle block. But we still need two. I'm going to pull these out. So here's our two. There's 1 and 2. Here's our 1 and 2. We still need to trim these up. So I have this little Quilter Select ruler. It's a 3.5 inch square. And I was using this when I first started. The problem is there's a lot of bulk in here, in this center seam, because 4 different corners are coming together. There's just a lot of bulk going on right there. So this will kind of rock around that square, and I didn't like that. So I stopped using this. I went back to my big one. But what I did is we need to cut these down to 2.5 because we want them to finish at 2. So what I did is I marked with some washi tape my 2.5 inch line, so I don't have to keep counting, because I would count every time. And we know that this is going to be the center of that 2.5. So it's 1 1/4. So I'm going to look for 1 1/4, and let me see. We'll use this to point. Do I have a pointer right here? Let me use that. All right, so we're going to look for 1 1/4, which is right here, and this intersection should be right on that point. So if I move that intersection of 1 1/4, I can drop this in right there. So a few things are going to happen if it's lined up right. I have a diagonal line that's going to follow that seam. The 2.5-inch marking on both sides should line up with this seam, and that that 1.25 should fit right there. These all work. This is a bigger ruler. It's easier to hold on to, so it's not going to shake around. I can trim one edge, flip it, and now I just have to line my 2.5-inch line up. That diagonal should still fit. Everything else should still work. Trim and trim. And now we have our 2.5-inch square. I'll do that one more time. And these have been pressed really nice. So I'm coming in. There's my 1.25. I'm going to line that up, eyeballing it, and trying to make sure my diagonal line is across that seam. 2.5 lays on this seam. 2.5 lays on this seam. 1.25. Everything looks good. Flip. Line everything up one more time. Remember, this makes 2 of each block. So I've made a total of 15, which will double into 30. So I'm going to have 30 2.5-inch squares. For our border, the 4-block border, we need to have 3 of each color. And the teal or the aqua only has 2 colors. So I'm going to pick 2 of one color, which are going to be these ones. We have the black blocks. We're going to save them, the black and white blocks. So these I'm going to have 8 because I made them all unique. 4 of them I'm saving for my border cornerstones. So those are going to get put to the side. And then I'm just going to go through, and I have all these pairs. I'm going to keep one for the quilt and one for later. One for the quilt and one for later. And I'm currently working on my later quilt. I will put pictures on my social media so you can see that. And now we just have to finish our 4-patch. So let me trim one of these up, and we'll throw this in the 4-patch with it. All right, so we have our 12 2.5-inch taupe squares, and now we're just going to make 4 patches. And how I like to do this, I just took a colored and a taupe and a color and a taupe, and I'm going to sew these at my machine. We'll get all this other stuff out of the way. And my walking foot's still on, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me any. I'm going to press these towards the taupe block because there's less seam to deal with in the back. So instead of trying to fold these seams back, I'm just going to press towards that taupe block. So here are my 2 blocks. I would go in and do all of them, and I just press them all to a taupe block. Then I can flip, and these are going to line up like this. And because we pressed to the taupe side, those seams will nest. So I can line this up and stitch down. One thing we want to keep an eye on, and we want to try to do, let me pull this over, is when we're stitching this, we want to make sure that this corner and this corner are lining up so we can get a nice sharp point between there. I always stitch and then I'll fold my fabric back and see how they look, because they look pretty good right there. As we stitch, things might shift a little bit. So I'm gonna check it right before I get to that point. There's a lot of bulk in that area too, so I'm gonna fold that back, see how everything is lining up, and it looks pretty good. And I want that needle to hit right in that spot. Now I can go and press this open, and everything lines up right in that corner really nice. Once it's pressed, it's going to even look better. And we have our 4 patch blocks, and we need a total of 6 of these. And once they're done, we're just going to kind of leave them there. This block got off a little bit. I'm not that worried. I can fix that as I stitch the next, when I stitch the blocks together. I might just keep an eye and say, okay, we got off a little bit. But for the most part, this looks really good. I'm not worried about it. So we'll see you back here in a second. I'm going to go press this. All right, everyone. So that is how to make a 1/4 square triangle block. And then we are using them in our 4 patch blocks. We're going to make 6 of these, and they're going to be this inner border. I haven't put the border together yet. I'll do that when we do the whole quilt. I just want to get these units made. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, follow me on social media, Adam's So Fun, and that's SEW. And I'm going to be posting, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but I made a bunch of flying geese with my extra pieces. I'm going to have a bunch of quarter square triangle blocks left over with my extra pieces. So I'm going to throw them all together some way and make another quilt out of that and some of the mini panels. So follow me there so you can see that. The link to the pattern is below if you'd like to join us. And what else? Oh, like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. And I hopefully you're having a great time stitching this together. And we'll see you in the next video when we put that top together. Thanks for joining. Bye, everybody.